Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm so thrilled to be here hosting a live stream with you again. And I've seen the chat thread as people are signing in even before we've started. So it's great to see some familiar names and also some new ones too. So thank you for joining. If you are new to checking out the OEM channel, you'll definitely want to subscribe. And if you've caught these live streams before, you know I have to do the shout outs to everybody. My mom, dad, and me, you know, Mother's Day is around the corner. My neighbor Bonnie and Bill are probably watching. Suzanne and Courtney, I know you're watching. We've got moms all over the place watching. Raf, I'm going to, if you're watching, we'll be talking about dulce de leche during this demonstration. And so, as you know, you voted right here on this channel for my chocolate lava cake. And it's not just a chocolate lava cake. This is a lava cake with a dulce de leche and peanut butter filling. Now, if you don't like peanut butter or allergic, you can still make this recipe and leave out the peanut butter. And if you prefer not to have the dulce de leche, why would you? But if you prefer not to, you can make it without. And you could just make a simple, delicious lava cake. But I'm going to walk through some really important points and great little tips and tricks to make that perfect lava cake that has sort of, pardon me, the crust on the outside and then that soft, gooey, molten center right in the middle. Before I officially get started, I'm waiting for the okay from our channel manager, TJ, and I just got the thumbs up. We've got TJ running the thread, so if I don't get a question for you, TJ's there to sort of make sure you're doing okay. We've got my sweetie Michael behind on camera and sound. He's waving. And so now I am all set to get started. Let's make a chocolate lava cake with peanut butter and dulce de leche to celebrate Mother's Day. Here in North America, Mother's Day is now, the second Sunday in May. If you're in the UK, it's in March. If you're in South America, it's in October, which makes sense because it's spring there. So wherever you are, even if it's not Mother's Day this Sunday, well, maybe treat your mom to something nice, and if you are a mom, well, treat yourself to something nice. And I know some of you are baking along with us, like Hermione from Greece. And so I will take the appropriate pauses throughout, and we're gonna have lots of time to handle some Q&A as we move along. So the first thing you want to do to start your lava cake is get your dishes ready. So this recipe makes 6 individual servings, and you want to use ramekins. These are 150 ml or 5-ounce ramekins. I've greased them lightly already. Now the real trick is now to dust them with cocoa powder. And I'm not using flour in this recipe because of 2 particular reasons. The first reason is I don't want to see the white dust of flour on the outside of my molten cake. But also, this recipe happens to be gluten-free. There is no wheat flour in the recipe. So why would I bother introducing it at the very beginning of the recipe just to coat the ramekins? If I were to use sugar or icing sugar, it would stick. And we don't want that in this recipe. So all I've done is spooned a little cocoa powder into 1 ramekin, and then I'm going to twist as I tip it over the next ramekin. So that way I'm hopefully not making too much of a mess. I'll give it a little tap, and then the ramekin is fully coated, so I know I'll be able to tip out that lava cake warm from the oven with ease. Go. And you just work along as you go from ramekin to ramekin. Now, you'll probably notice when I have my hands full, I have to pay attention to what I'm doing, especially if it's chocolate. I'll make a mess. But I will be able to take a pause now and again. I see all the hellos coming up. People writing hello from Kenya. And SFMBK is asking what time it is here. It's 12 noon here, so it's lunchtime here. And if you're watching from Southeast Asia, I know it's almost bedtime or maybe past your bedtime. But wherever you're watching from, I'm so glad you're here with us. And I'm just barely wasting a drop of cocoa powder. There's barely anything extra. I'll just tip that last bit out. Oh, that wasn't even half a teaspoon extra. So now what I'm going to do, and if you're making these at home and you have space in your freezer, a great idea is to actually chill your ramekins now, because that's going to help set the warm lava cake batter as it goes into the pan, so that way you can sort of work ahead a little more quickly. It's not an essential step, but it's going to help me keep on time as we're doing this live stream. So I'm going to pop these in the freezer just to chill them down. There we go. And now onto the chocolate. I have 210 grams or 7 ounces of dark couverture baking chocolate. I'm using a bittersweet, and so it is a 68%. I like baking with anywhere from 61 to 70%. You can use a semi-sweet, which is in the 50s, 51 to 58% cocoa chocolate mass. And I've got 6 tablespoons, so 90 grams of unsalted butter measured in here. Now, you did have a couple of questions. Hermione had asked earlier, could I use milk chocolate? And it was Tbsp was asking, well, can I use white chocolate in this recipe? Unfortunately, you can't do a one-to-one substitution with milk and white chocolate in most baking recipes, and this is included. And that's because dark chocolate, because of the cocoa solids in there, sets differently than the white, which is virtually cocoa butter, plus the dairy ingredients. So it's a lot softer. And in fact, to Tbsp, who did write, I am working on a white chocolate lava cake recipe. I'm fine-tuning it just to get the perfect set, and I want it to not have any browning on the outside. So now I'm just going to take the, pardon me. Oh, here we go. We've got a super chat coming up. So I'm just going to take a pause and say hello to Dharma. Thank you very much for your super chat. And yes, I think these will be criminally delicious, but please don't call the police on me. Just enjoy the decadence. So thank you very much for that. These notes are great coming in. Oh, hello from the Philippines. I have my pot of water. Now, I've only filled it a few centimeters with water, and you just want to see steam. You don't want to have active bubbles boiling, because if the steam pushes over the sides of your bowl when you set it on your water bath, it then condenses and can drop in your bowl, and then you're at risk of seizing your chocolate. So you just want that little bit of steam to heat the bowl, which then heats the chocolate and melts the chocolate and the butter together. Now, chocolate melts at a lower temperature than butter, so you're going to see the chocolate melts first, and you have to wait until you see the butter pieces come through. I am using a glass bowl so that you can see what I'm doing. And we've got the Cocoa Cam, focusing here on the close-up so you can see what I'm doing much better. But normally, if you have a metal bowl, you'll find it melts faster and easier, just because the metal conducts the heat and it tends to be thinner. So a stainless steel bowl works just fine. But if you're using glass, that's absolutely fine. You can melt your chocolate in the microwave if you wish, but please, it's actually easier to do at stovetop, because you can walk away and just let the gradual heat. If you're melting chocolate in a microwave, make sure it's not on high. You want to set it on a medium setting, and you have to stop and stir your chocolate every 10 seconds. Not a second more, because otherwise it can burn around the edges. And I can bring a lot of mistakes in the kitchen back and help you through that. Once the chocolate's burned, there's no coming back. So this is why I favor this. I'm not opposed to microwaves. I just don't happen to have counter space. I have to make room for a mixer, and I even keep my blender hidden away. So, you know, you have to make those decisions. What's going to sit on your counter? I'm just starting to melt the chocolate. You don't have to stir it constantly as you're beginning to melt it. It's when it gets close to being done that you want to make sure you're stirring it more regularly. So we're just letting it do its thing. Let the heat start getting at the chocolate. And you've noticed I'm melting what looks like chocolate chips, but these aren't. the chocolate chips that are meant to put into your chocolate chip cookies. This is couverture baking chocolate. It can also come in blocks or squares, and you have to chop it. And that's why it's very important to weigh your chocolate. Whenever you see a recipe that calls for ounces or grams of chocolate, when a recipe calls for 8 ounces of chocolate, that's not referring to 1 cup. That's actually referring to the weight of 8 ounces or 240 grams. So that's why you'll notice in my recipes, because I know I'm speaking to the whole world, I include volume and metric measures. But with chocolate, it's always weight and weight. Now, while I'm waiting for my chocolate, I will take a few questions. And Jim, if you're joining us, yes, this is the chocolate and the butter I'm melting together. So we've got 210 grams of chocolate and 90 grams of the butter. And we've got, oh, good question. Digambar is asking, can I use dark compound chocolate in this recipe? That's the kind of chocolate that you'll find will not melt smoothly. And while you might end up getting a nice texture, my fear would be using compound chocolate, you're not going to get a molten center to this cake, because compound chocolate is meant to hold its shape, where couverture chocolate is meant to melt and be fluid. And what's beautiful about this recipe, and you're going to see it, is by adding some peanut butter and dulce de leche to the center with the molten chocolate together, they all sort of melt and merge together, and it is insanely delicious, insanely delicious. Someone, I was in someone's online meeting. Well, I'm glad I could pop by and cook you up a little something. Oh, good question. Maria from the Philippines is asking, can I use canola oil instead of butter? You need to use a solid fat that sits at room temperature, so a coconut oil would work well, or a vegan margarine would do well. But I wouldn't recommend the oil, because I think you would have the center of your cake, the peanut butter and the dulce de leche, sink to the bottom, because that batter needs a bit of structure. Now, my chocolate is coming along here. It's about half melted, and so is the butter. And please don't forget, as you're watching, or if you're just joining us now, if you're just joining us, I'm making a chocolate lava cake with peanut butter and dulce de leche in the center of it. So right there, you just have to like that video. Just go ahead and hit like. We're up to 96. We gotta crack 100. Come on. I know I've only been melting chocolate and butter so far, but we need to get 100 likes on this video. So please do hit that button. Oh, here's a restry. Oh, and Dee's asking, I don't like peanut butter, any substitute, just leave the peanut butter out. You just don't even have to put it. If you double up on the dulce de leche. But it's an extra to this recipe. It's not an essential component of the recipe itself. Great question. Oh, and that one went quickly. But I did have a question. Michelle was asking earlier about cracking on the top of her cake. So this won't happen with your lava cakes, but that's often a sign that your oven might be running a little bit hot, because it's pushing your baking powder and baking soda up through. So the batter in the center of the cake is actually pushing through the top of the cake and creating a crack. If you're making a banana bread or a pound cake, it's expected. But if you're making a flat layer cake, you don't want that. So I would check your oven temperature. And I don't know if you saw that little puff of steam coming out the side of my bowl. So that's my sign to turn the stove top down. And my chocolate is almost melted. Now you can pull your chocolate off the heat before it has completely melted. If it's very, very close, and out of habit, you want to wipe the bottom of your bowl, just so you're not getting any water droplets anywhere near the chocolate. And just give it a final stir. Let the actual heat of the melted chocolate and butter finish melting so that it's nice and smooth. And you don't really want, if you can avoid it, if you're baking along with me, you don't want to use the chocolate hot from the stove. So you can set it aside to cool, and because glass holds the heat for so long, I'm actually going to transfer from my warm chocolate melting bowl to another bowl. That way the bowl will absorb some of the heat and my chocolate will cool faster. Get every bit of chocolate out of that. There we go. I'm just going to set that aside for a second. And now we can work on the base of the batter. Now, I think this is a great recipe for Mother's Day, and especially if you're a new baker too, because I mean, we love going out to restaurants and having a dessert like a lava cake, and depending where you live, you may not be able to. Our restaurants are still closed here. And my thoughts go to everyone around the world who is still going through this just abysmally challenging time. But we do have to treat ourselves and be positive, and that's why we're spending this time together, so we can bake and share and feel that sense of giving even during a challenging time. So this is why this is an ideal recipe. It's also an ideal recipe because you don't need fancy tools. There's no stand mixer or electric beaters for this recipe, yet you're going to make a restaurant-style dessert. So you've got your eggs. I call for 2 whole eggs and 2 egg whites. And, egg yolks. And the reason I call for the yolks is I find if I use all whole eggs, I get too much lift in my lava cake, and then my center filling with the dulce de leche and peanut butter will sink to the bottom. So I found that, and it was Hermione, I think, was asking that question. By adding the richness of 2 yolks in place of 1 extra egg, gives me that set and the richness I need on the outside without souffling too much. And that brings up another good question. It was Andreas Bibi from Mexico was asking about the difference between a lava cake like this. Oop, I should be saving my whites. A lava cake like this and a souffle. The ingredients are very similar, but the way we treat the eggs are very different. So I just need to whisk these eggs by hand with my sugar. So for this recipe, it's a 1/2 cup of sugar, and you can add your teaspoon of vanilla at this point. Where a souffle, you would whisk your egg yolks with the chocolate, then you would whisk your egg whites separately, fold them in, and you want that lift and volume. The end goal is actually similar. You want something light that has structure on the outside, and a chocolate souffle should actually be a little liquid in the center. But this is more about the center first, with a shell of a chocolate cake on the outside. So a different treatment of similar ingredients gives you a completely different end result. And isn't that the fun in baking, right? We tend to work with the same ingredients over and over again, but you get so many different results. So you'll notice in the recipe that is below the screen here, don't forget to like. Oh, we've got to, just going to see, where are we with likes right now?
I think your counter is behind because TJ said we were above 250.
Oh, we're at 318 now. I just had to refresh my screen, so thank you, everyone. See, I see your thread coming up, so I thought I was still up to date there. All right, we're at 318. I know we're going to hit 400 before we even get those cakes into the oven. We've got some great questions coming in. This is fantastic. Hello from Egypt. Question about Torroni, which can be tricky to make. Italian meringue, electric meter. Okay. Farida, you want to improve your Torroni making a nougat style. A Torroni is a nougat style. So you make an Italian meringue, you boil sugar, you pour it into your mixer or use electric beaters, and you just got to go, 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 go on the highest speed possible. If you find you're not getting the right set, then I would recommend cook your sugar a few extra degrees higher than what the recipe calls for. So if it's calling for, it's probably anywhere from 240 to 250 Fahrenheit, then take it up an extra 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and that'll give you a little more set, especially too if your beaters aren't as powerful as you might like. And you know, as the Torroni starts cooling, your beaters really start working. That might help you out and get that set when it's finally time. So while I'm taking these questions, I'm also taking advantage of just a moment. So while we're not making this recipe using a stand mixer or electric beaters, you do want to add a little bit of volume into your eggs. So just whisk by hand. After you've combined everything, just whisk for a minute. There will be no visual difference. You don't have to wait for it to hit a ribbon or anything like that. And your eggs don't even have to be warmed or at room temperature. They can just be as they are. And there we go, just about a minute. And that just gives you an extra minute for your chocolate to cool down. So now it's time to add all this chocolate and the melted butter into the bowl, just like so. Oh, great question. It's me, Vinci, asking about thoughts on burnt cheesecake. Okay, so I'm looking at Michael right now. How do I feel about burnt cheesecake?
New favorite thing.
New favorite thing. I had not made one before, and it was only over the last 3-4 weeks I've been playing with a burnt cheesecake, the Basque style. And it's so great because you don't have to worry about it cracking in the oven because it's supposed to crack and it's supposed to burn on top and it tastes delicious. So that brings up a great point. I have spent the winter working on dozens and dozens of new recipes. So I plan on coming back with some live streams with some altogether new recipes for you. Just to let you know, we do have one booked in for May 18th, so that's almost 2 weeks away. We're gonna try it on a Tuesday for a change. So I'll be back with another live stream. And as I'm talking, I'm just whisking the chocolate into the egg mixture. So if you're baking along with me, that's where you're at. And now this is where it gets interesting, but yet easy at the same time. So the only 2 dry ingredients you have to add are a tablespoon of cocoa powder. I use Dutch process because that's just what I have around and I prefer it. If you have just regular cocoa powder, it has to be unsweetened, but regular works just fine in this recipe. And a tablespoon of cornstarch. Now, this allows me to keep this recipe gluten-free. If you don't want to use cornstarch, but you're okay with wheat flour, replace the cornstarch with a tablespoon of wheat flour. But what you need is the cocoa and the cornstarch to absorb some of the liquid. That way, when your lava cake bakes, you get that really nice sort of crust on the outside, and it's also got a bit of strength to it, so it will hold the molten center inside. Just a pinch of salt, just a little bit, because this is a sweet recipe. I mean, it almost relates to a brownie in a way, but it's not that sweet. And we are going to get that molten center. And this is one of those recipes. I've tried many lava cake recipes. Not all of them have a really nice, runny, almost fudge sauce-like chocolate center. Some can be just a little too spongy, where this one is definitely fluid and beautiful. So I don't even bother sifting the cocoa powder because even though cocoa powder typically has a few lumps, you don't have to worry about it. With 1 tablespoon, you're all set. That's it. That's all it takes to bring this recipe together. I'm just gonna make a little space here. And I'll grab those ramekins from the freezer. So this, freezing the ramekins, as a reminder, if you've just joined us recently, is to help set the base of the lava cake as I'm filling it, so that way when I drop in the peanut butter and the dulce de leche in the center, it won't sink to the bottom. So now I'm just going to use a measuring cup and take about a 1/4 cup, so 50-60 ml, and pour that into each ramekin. Should I reposition my bowl, Michael, so you can see better?
Yeah.
I got that feeling. There we go.
I was sending you a psychic.
We've been married more than 20 years now, so the psychic messages work. So this fills the ramekins about 1 centimeter. And if you have ramekins that are a different shape, they'll work absolutely fine. I have some curved ones that work well. So you're spooning that batter in. I have used an ice cream scoop for this. It can be a little bit sloppy. A piping bag is definitely very sloppy. You have to work quite quickly. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is pop these back in the freezer for just a couple minutes. The recipe says to chill for about 15 minutes, but I've already pre-chilled the ramekins, so I think I'll definitely be able to cut that back, just so we're not waiting for them. But that too is to help set the filling. But you don't want to put the rest of your batter in the fridge, just leave it sitting on the counter. I'll just pop this in the freezer for a second. There we go. And this gives us a moment to talk about those add-ins. So as I mentioned, when you're making a lava cake, you can just live with this recipe and know that when you bake it and break into it, that it is going to be gooey and fluid in the center, but warm like a chocolate sauce. But the fun I find is adding those extras. And so I made a version with dulce de leche, and it was great. And then I made a version using peanut butter, and it was great. And Michael and I together decided we just needed both in one dessert to really take it to the next level. So this isn't dulce de leche here. This is just my peanut butter, and you need 2 tablespoons total because you're only going to put a teaspoon in each ramekin. And you can use all natural peanut butter, or you can use the conventional, or you could use a hazelnut or an almond butter. Really, it's up to you. A lot of people, tahini in brownies is quite popular. You could add a little bit of tahini paste to this recipe and really get kind of playful with it. But let's take a moment and talk about dulce de leche. How's everybody doing? Hello from Portugal. Great to see you. Oh, someone's asking about considering doing a meet and greet in Niagara after COVID. I would love to do some live events. I'm enjoying connecting with the whole world here, but it'd be great to get out there and in person. Oh, it's nice that we can actually start thinking about that again. Yes, and prayers to India because they're going through such a difficult time now, and as well as our friends in Argentina too. It's amazing. It's great to see everyone writing in here. Oh, you've caught on that I'm looking at the threads right now. This is great. Lots of questions. This is okay. Angel asking a good question about when the lava cake is baked properly. We will get to that. Wow, great questions. Oh, good. Another question too. How long will the lava cake stay fluid? This recipe, the center stays fluid for about 15-20 minutes. So you've really got a lot of wiggle room time here. But while we're letting the lava cake batter set, I'm going to touch on dulce de leche a little bit. So you can buy dulce de leche pre-made, but depending on where you are in the world and what type you buy, there are different types. I bought 2 styles at our local grocery store here in Niagara in Canada, and both are quite different. So this, I won't talk about brands, but you can really just hold up the jar so you can see the color and the texture. This one is fluid, so I would treat this as a sauce. I wouldn't use it to fill a cake, or I wouldn't use it for alfajores, the famous South American cookie with the dulce de leche in the center and coconut on the outside. It's too thin, it's too runny. So this is great for your toast or as a sauce. Then you've got thicker ones you can find. Now this is what I like to use as a filling for alfajores and for this cake. And if you can't find dulce de leche, you can make your own. So you have probably seen this. You take a can of condensed milk, don't open it, you peel off the label, and you put it in a large sauce pot. I use this pot, I made this last night. And you have to make sure, what's very, very important is that you keep the tin completely immersed in water and you simmer it for a dulce de leche that is lighter in color and consistency, 2 hours. To get a thicker, richer, filling style dulce de leche, cook it for 3 hours. I had to top up my pot probably about 6 or 7 times, so you do not leave it unattended. But then you want to cool it, chill it. Do not open it while the dulce de leche is hot. You have to chill it completely. But now let's take a look at the dulce de leche I made last night. So while it's not as dark in color as the store-bought, let's give it a stir. Let's see, I've got to find the right spoon. So, oh, look at that. It is thick and holds its shape. So really, we could use either one. I'm going to stick to my homemade condensed milk version. The original dulce de leche was made by actually cooking down milk and sugar in an open pot for hours and hours and hours. And I will say, I tried it once. It's a lot of work. You can't leave it unattended. So you either have to have a pot with a stirring function, or someone to help you, like a large family, so you can take turns to do it. It's a lot of work. I have been told that you can use an Instant Pot style cooker and do it the same, follow the manufacturer's instructions, but it takes 35 minutes to make dulce de leche. Again, another tool I don't have on my kitchen counter, but maybe you do. Okay, now that I've chatted my way through dulce de leche, let's fill these lava cakes. And how's everyone doing here? We're good? All right, I'm just gonna refresh my screen so I can see where we are with likes.
Sophia made that stuff from goat milk, the cajeta.
Oh, yes. And Sophia's from?
Mexico.
Yes, one of Michael's students from Niagara College, he just finished his term. Sophia made us some cajeta, which is dulce de leche made from goat milk, and it is delicious, let me tell you. So many great options. We are almost at 400 likes. I would love to see 500. Can we hit 500? I think we can hit 500. It's chocolate. Let's do it. So don't forget to hit those likes if you're just joining us now. So now I'm going to give my dulce de leche in the tin a little bit of a stir just to soften it up. And you just want to drop a teaspoon right in the center of the ramekin. So you don't want it touching the edges because we want that frame, that structure of the chocolate cake to bake around it. It's tempting to put in more than a teaspoon, but if you put in too much, it's at risk of leaking out as it bakes. And really, once you have this dessert, you'll find a teaspoon is all you need to really get the full flavor in there. So there we go. Once you've added that, then you move on to the peanut butter. Our timing's doing well. And the same amount, a teaspoon of peanut butter. And a reminder, you can leave the peanut butter out altogether. You don't need to substitute with anything else if you don't wish. You can leave the dulce de leche out. I've also put in other things like tart cherries to make a Black Forest style of lava cake. I have done fresh raspberries. I've even taken the pre-wrapped square caramels and put those in the center. I even once did that and forgot to unwrap the caramels and put them in the center. Don't do that. Okay, and now we have the rest of our lava cake filling, and you want to top your add-ins so they're completely hidden. Now, the good news is, if you're thinking of making this to serve for Mother's Day, or if you're having a special dinner, you don't have to make this right before you bake it. I'm going to bake one right away. I've also pre-made some, but this recipe can be made and chilled, and this is what most restaurants do. They make them ahead of time and chill them, and then they bake them to order. When the order comes in, it goes into the oven, and then 18 minutes later, and you'll notice the cook time is slightly different. So if you are baking these molten cakes from freshly baked, they take about 18 minutes. If they're cold, they take about 20 minutes. It really is not that much difference of a cook time, but it's just allowing the heat to get through to the center of this cake. Just get my last little bit on there. Okay, now there are only 2 of us here, so I'm not going to bake all 6 at once. I will bake one of these, and I'm gonna bake one of the ones I made earlier, just so we can look at the difference. So here is one. The one in my right hand, actually I'm gonna get a different color ramekin so that way I'll remember the difference. This one I made ahead of time and chilled, and this one was freshly made. So they don't look that much different. And I'll pop them in the oven, set the timer. Okay. So we are going to fill. I was wondering how much time we would fill, but I would love to take some time right now to answer some of your baking questions, but at the same time, I have a little bonus recipe to share with you. And that is, I can't stand to see chocolate on the counter, so let me just wipe up here. There we go. Let me take a few questions. This is a great opportunity for me to connect, because as you know, sometimes I get really busy. When I get involved with cake decorating, or check out some of my other live stream videos to see other completely different recipes I've done. Everything from creme brulee, I've done cheesecake, I did a peach pie, and Jackie was asking earlier about perfect pie dough tricks. And I would say just watch that recipe, because I walk through making pie dough from start to finish in great detail, because it's one of my favorite things to make, in addition to the very recipe that's in the oven. But I think this is a great time. Let me take a few questions, and then I'm going to throw in that little bonus recipe, which I'll have TJ include at the bottom of the lava cake recipe after this live stream goes live, or sorry, goes back up on the channel. Because if you do have to leave, you can come back and watch this from start to finish, because it will be on the Oh Yum channel. And how are we doing on our likes here? We must be catching up. Someone just asked, how much do I bake a day? Well, I have developed over 100 recipes in the last 4 months. So there have been a lot of goodies going to friends and neighbors these days. I'm working on a new book project and new recipes for the channel. So it's just nonstop. But then I do go in waves. I have to almost stop and regroup. So I'll go through a few weeks where I'm not baking a lot, and then I'll come back to it because I miss it too much. To Kathy, oh, hi, Kathy. Yes, Kathy's asking, if I take out the peanut butter, can I just replace that with the same amount of dulce de leche? Great question. 100% yes, you can, Kathy. And it's great to have you here, too. Greetings from Colombia. And whoa, everyone's writing so many questions. Oh, Farida, have I ever tried or made Egyptian desserts? No, but I would love to. And a friend of mine in Canada here just came out with a book of his family's Egyptian recipes, and I have a copy of it, and I did look at the dessert section, so I'm about to try making some Egyptian desserts. That's a great question. And who got, oh, Labecca, who got to eat all of the desserts I made in the last few months? Well, I have to taste everything. So Michael and I do eat everything, but we try and keep it balanced. So yes, friends and families. And when we can, when it's available to us, we donate any products that are intact and not food safety compromised. And so we try and waste nothing. And the nice thing about these lava cakes is I pre-made a batch. I have my lava cakes sitting back here. They will keep in the fridge for a good week, because once that batter is chilled, it really sets all the ingredients. You can even freeze them if you want, but please don't put the ramekin from the freezer into the oven, because you might risk cracking the ramekin to go from the cold to the heat. But yes, we try and freeze, give away. Nothing goes to waste if we can help it. Hello from Malta. From Japan. We've got a question, what got me into baking? Well, I think for all of us, because all of you watching are watching because you love baking and you're interested and curious, and I bet you have a similar story to mine, and then that someone in your family was a big baker, and that helped influence you. In my case, it was my grandmother. She loved baking. She was a great cook, but she loved baking, and you could feel that energy in the kitchen, and you just wanted to be near her when she was baking. And so we would just spend time hanging out in the kitchen, and she would slowly start teaching me things. Of course, she cooked like a grandma. You know, you mix it till it's right, and you cook it till it's done. And then I took some of her recipes and then translated them. So some of the recipes you see out there actually come from my grandmother, including my walnut roll. That's a good one. Hello in California. Hello, Miguel in the Philippines. Oh my gosh. Oh, and I hope to visit the Philippines again sometime soon. I have been before, quite a few times, and it's a wonderful place, delicious food. All right, so everybody's got, if you're baking along, you've got your ramekins in the oven, and I think, hello, Varisha. It is great that everybody wants to say hello. Oh, great question. Chaya is asking about egg replacements. I haven't tested an egg replacement in this recipe particular because it calls for so much egg. I would have to play for it, but I would expect that the silken tofu option would be your best option. I wouldn't try the flax egg. It'd be too mealy for the quantity and for the texture of this recipe. You wouldn't get a soft molten center. So the silken tofu or a commercially made egg replacer would do better. I don't think you'd have good luck with the fava, aqua fava, the chickpea liquid. I don't think you'd get enough set from it. That's good when you need to whip egg whites, is an egg replacer. All right. Oh, well, hello, Dorcas from India. Thank you for joining us. So now I'm going to take a moment and throw in a bonus recipe. Now, I talked to you about making dulce de leche from scratch or buying it, but if you need something that's a little different in that caramel world, have you ever tried making a burnt honey caramel? This is something new, along with making the Basque cheesecake, the burnt cheesecake that I have come onto, and we absolutely love it. You want to make your house smell delicious, make a burnt honey caramel. It is 2 simple ingredients, 100 grams of honey and 60 grams of unsalted butter. So the first thing I'm going to do is weigh my honey. If you're used to measuring your honey by volume, please switch to weights, because then you won't have to ever scrape out a measuring cup again, and you'll be so happy that you figured it out. 1 cup of honey weighs 300 grams. So then that helps you work backwards. So this is technically by volume, 1/3 of a cup of honey, but weighing the 100 grams is just so much easier because it goes right into the pan, no stickiness. No mess. You could use, if you have access to fancy flower honeys or chestnut honey, that would be delicious. What it does is it concentrates the honey flavor. And honey is naturally syrupy and thick, but what we want to do is boil it up until it turns a deep caramel color, almost the color of this dulce de leche. And then instead of adding cream to it, we add the 60 grams of unsalted butter. And you treat it just like making a caramel sauce. So I've got the pan on high heat. I won't need to stir it. You want to make sure you leave room for the honey because it will bubble up. And that's all honey does that. But you don't want to stir it down. You just leave it and let it bubble up, and it'll hopefully break the top of the pot. And this doesn't take long. It only takes about 3 minutes. And the aroma of the honey as it's caramelizing just floats through every room in the house. And then the butter on top of that, oh, the two together. And that can be used in place of a caramel sauce. If you're making something like just a simple sponge cake or a chocolate dessert or a cheesecake, whew, this just all of a sudden takes it to a new level. We even use it in a savory cooking. Michael was making a breaded pork dish, and we served it with a cucumber salad, and the burnt honey alongside of it was just a beautiful complement. You could add chili heat to it or turn it into a vinaigrette if you wanted to. So now the honey, it takes no time because it's only 100 grams to start boiling, and you really just have to pay attention to the color of the bubbles and around the bubbles where the bubbles break, because right now they are honey colored. They're a light amber color, but within a minute or two, they're going to start turning darker, and you'll see these little tufts of smoke sort of pop and burst. And that doesn't mean your honey is burning, but it is caramelizing. And already it smells fantastic in here. Oh, Lenore is asking, can I use powdered sugar in this recipe? That is a great question. I would say 100% yes, you can. Now the recipe calls for 100 grams, half a cup of granulated sugar, which means I would use 75 grams of icing sugar in this recipe if you're substituting out. And it should work just fine because ultimately the sugar dissolves into the eggs. That's a great question to ask. Hey, Cherry! Cherry's here. Nice to see you, Cherry. Oh, yes, Warisha. Yes, your ID is Faiz. Well, hello, Warisha. It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And Ira's asking, what other dessert would I recommend for Mother's Day? other than the lava cake? Well, I did put out two options, a coconut chiffon cake. Any flavor of chiffon cake would be delicious. Or something made with matcha tea, a matcha Swiss roll. And I may come back and make those two recipes. They rated very well, even though they didn't win the poll this time around. They might next time. Now, you've got the close-up cam. I have taken my honey off the heat. See how the smoke has changed from steam to smoke? The bubbles have thickened up, and you can see around that dark caramel color. So now I'm gonna add a little bit of butter, not all of it all at once. And you can whisk or just swirl. This is now slowing down the cooking, cooling the honey. And this is quite fluid at room temperature. And it sets up firmly, just like caramel sauce does. And you can rewarm it. It may separate a little bit once you chill it, but you just whisk it together again, and it holds. There, how's my angle now? Because I'm on a little delay. Oh, there we go. I'll pour this into a dish so you can really get a good look at it.
It smells like beeswax.
Ah, it does smell like beeswax. And I can see even in our kitchen lights, there's a big waft of smoke. So even though it looked like it was burning, and it is called burnt honey, it's not. There is no bitterness to this sauce at all. And let's see, what jar? I'll put it in a flat dish so that way you can see it and appreciate its color. This will cool it faster. It has such a gorgeous color to it. It's almost it's got a bit of an orange hue because of the honey. Oh, it is amazing. And just the aroma. It's such a sophisticated sauce to include. I've got quite the buildup of dishes behind me here. We have 6 minutes left on the timer before our lava cakes come out of the oven. I'm just gonna take a peek. Oh, they're doing well. You can tell when your lava cakes are done because you'll notice they start getting dull on the outside. And once the entire top of the lava cake, which essentially will be its bottom once you turn it out, once that's dull, it loses its shine, its melted chocolate shine, then you know it's set enough to take out of the oven because you want to be able to tip it out without that bottom breaking and then you want your mom or you as mom to open that lava cake and reveal the goopy center. You don't want it leaking out ahead of time. So I've got time for a couple more questions here. Sherlyn is asking, we've got a lot of Toroni questions. Could I use corn syrup instead of honey in the Toroni recipe? Yes, it would be delicious. It will add a honey intensity, but some nougat recipes, especially from the south of France, as opposed to the Italian, do use honey in their nougat. That happens to be another recipe I'm working on these days. So more on that coming later. But yes, you can use honey in place of the corn syrup. What counts is that thick liquid form of sugar. Oh, and Helen is asking, how about Father's Day? Well, I should do another live about Father's Day. Now, I don't know where you live and when your Father's Day is. Here, it's in middle of June. It also happens to be around my father's birthday. My father always asks for carrot cake for his birthday and for Father's Day. So I will probably, I may have made a carrot cake for the live stream last year, so I'll have to come up with something new. But we'll put it to a poll and you'll get to pick what you can make. So that's a great question. When I think of Mother's Day desserts, I think of sort of fluffy and light, anything lemon meringue, anything moussey, creamy, whipped cream. Something like an Eton mess would be delicious with crunchy meringue bits, fresh strawberries and whipped cream if you want something on the simpler side. So long as it's made with love and the sense of sharing, I know Mom is going to love it. A great question. Can agave be used? Now, Stella Marina, I don't know if you mean in the burnt honey or in the dessert. I would think the agave in the dessert should work fine. I have tried making caramel sauce with agave syrup, and it does work. You can make caramel with it. So you treat it exactly as I did the burnt honey, and the agave syrup works fine. It doesn't have the full bouquet, but it does have the caramel taste. So that is a great question to ask. And Rolita, you're asking about sharing my buttercream recipe. I do have quite a few buttercream recipes right here on the Oh Yum channel. You can find all 3 basic styles. The American or cupcake buttercream by looking at my cupcake recipes. I have a Swiss hat box cake recipe that makes my textbook Swiss buttercream recipe. And I do have an Italian buttercream recipe, and the precise dessert I make it on, but if you look on the search on the OEM channel, you'll find the Italian buttercream recipe. So great question. I have them all out there. And it's always worth repeating too, especially when you can see me make it live and you can ask those questions. And as a reminder, I will be back on May 18th with another live stream. So this isn't just a one and only. Schedules are getting busier, so I'm just trying to make sure I can fit them in. But I will be back on May 18th. That's a Tuesday. And it will be at this same time, 12 noon Eastern time. So Toronto or New York time, you can calculate from wherever you are. It's so great to have you joining me from around the world. And Vandana is asking, how can I subscribe to your recipes? Well, you subscribe to the channel right here, and you will be notified anytime there is a new recipe and new video coming your way. And every recipe video has the complete recipe beneath it, so it's easy to find. Wonderful. And Maria Natasha is asking, what is my inspiration while I'm making a recipe? Well, it comes from anything. It can be project-oriented. I'm working on a brand new cookbook, which is really about what I'm doing right now, imparting baking wisdom and sharing the inside information to make you a more empowered baker. So a lot of the recipes are inspired by that. I do some fundamentals, but I get pretty experimental and show you the cross applications. If you make a pastry cream, you can turn that into a diplomat cream. You can turn it into a chabouste cream. You can turn it into a mousseline cream, all with one basic recipe. And then I really get down with, I have jumped onto making Swiss method macaron as my preferred. First I learned how to make French style macaron first, then I moved into the Italian method, but I've settled on Swiss as my favorite. So that would be a good one to share sometime. Oh, thank you, Bonnie, for marking the 18th. I'll probably see you before then. Now, Bonnie lives down the street. I can deliver a couple of these desserts, but you're going to have to bake it yourself. But you have the bake time. I've got 1 minute left on the timer. Ava, yes, carrot cake forever. You and my dad. All right, we're getting requests for carrot cake. And a South African recipe. I would have to do some research and play with that too. I did try my hand at making my very first South Asian dessert. I made basan burfi, and it's right here on the channel. I'd love for you to check it out. I did have lots of guidance and tips around making it, and I think that's what's important. Our baking community is about sharing, not hiding information, and we want to learn and share some more. So I'd love for you to check that one out too. And hello to Abu Dhabi, and you heard that? That was my oven timer going off, and here we go. We are there. And I'll show these up close, Michael, so you can take a good peek. They look very much the same. So this was the one that I made in advance, so it had time to set, but you can see how it almost has that brownie-like top to it. But it went from going shiny on the surface. When you see it go matte, then you know it's done. And I'll hold up this one as well. This is the one that I made right in front of you and baked in real time. There we go. So you can see you've got that crust on the outside. Now, it is a good idea. You'll see in the recipe, I say to let these cool for a minute. And that's only because hot from the oven, the ramekins are scorching hot. I don't want you to burn your hands, but it allows everything in the ramekin to kind of settle in place for a second. So I'm going to grab my cooling rack just to give them a little space for the air to circulate. And we'll just take a second, just a minute or two, not too long, because I want to do the big reveal. But you do have time. So if you're serving these for guests, you don't have to rush right from when they come out of the oven to get them to the table. honestly, they will stay fluid for a good 15 minutes. And so they're going to continue to cook right now. But I find with this particular recipe, it is, unless you miss the timer and you let it go another 5 to 10 minutes, you are always going to have that liquid lava center to this cake that is absolutely marvelous. Get a couple of plates. And while I let...
It's a delicious pause when after the main course, when you're waiting in anticipation.
True.
It's just like that, you're just savoring every moment.
You should see Michael's face right now. He's in anticipation because he knows he's getting one of these desserts. But that's true. When there's that pause, you know something special coming. I think that really is nice. And it's about to happen now. And how are we doing on our likes? I'm going to refresh my screen a little bit. Yes, thank you. We crossed 500. That is absolutely amazing. Oh my is asking, oh my, you're like the cousin of, oh yum. Where to find the ramekins? These are Le Creuset ramekins, and they do come in an assortment of colors. And Lisa is asking, can you replace flour with almond flour? Now, Lisa, I don't know if you're asking in general. In quite a few recipes, yes, and I love using almond flour when I'm taking wheat flour out of the recipes. You've got some great options. And now, we've got lots of baking questions here. Hi, ML, Nina, thank you for writing. Eggless brownies. Oh, I can definitely manage eggless brownies. I think I have a recipe for them. I'll have to dig that up. It's been a while ago since I've made them. That's a good idea to do. And Nahi's asking about replacing dry yeast with baking powder or baking soda. That's a tougher one. Yeast generates carbon dioxide in a completely different way and for a different reason that baking powder and baking soda does. So if you're trying to make bread, it calls for yeast. If you use baking powder or baking soda in its place, you won't get the same result. I wish the answer was yes, but they are really very two distinct ingredients there.